Welcome to Universal Man. My name is Mark Weapon. I'm here to help you play a bigger game with your life and become a man that you admire by mastering yourself, optimizing your lifestyle, and conquering your goals. And today I'm going to be bringing you a video about how to stay clean from pornography during coronavirus lockdown. I know a lot of you guys are really struggling with that right now. You're stuck at home. Maybe you're extra stressed because you got kids at home, or you're worried about your job, or you just don't have anything to do. And the temptation of porn is pretty high. And I've heard a lot of guys complaining about it, struggling with it. And so, I figured I'd do this video to help you guys out. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be giving you a set of very clear protocols to follow that should really help you out with this process. I've been in this game of helping people quit porn for, like 7 years now. And so, I know a thing or two. So I want to share it with you guys. Now, before we dive into it, just a quick update. I've got a bunch of new stuff planned, new material, got some new free guides, that sort of thing coming. But because of the virus disrupting things for not only myself, but also my employees and stuff, my video editors and that sort of thing, it's slowing down a little bit. So I'm sorry, but it's on the way. But in the meantime, I'll be doing these when I'm able. And then also, what we're doing is we're running a sale for Reforged Man, which is my flagship course on quitting porn. So, I don't run sales for this very much, and it's a really good course. There's a ton of content in it. If you've already consumed a lot of my free content and you're ready to take it to the next level, well then check out the link in the description below. Use the code and you get a discount for it. I think it's probably one of the best things you can do during lockdown is whenever you're triggered, you can just pop on one of those videos and it'll take you in depth through the entire process of quitting porn. But you don't necessarily need that. Maybe you just need a simple instructional video like this one, and it's going to give you everything you need to stay clean. That's kind of the hope here. So I'm going to try and provide you with as much value as I can, and as much as I think I could pack into one video before it starts being too much, before it starts being information overload. Sometimes I overload with information anyway, but I'm going to be trying to keep this relatively straightforward. Okay, so first thing here is let's look at why this is a challenge. Okay, quitting porn is difficult in and of itself in a normal lifestyle. But now we've got some kind of extra challenges on top of it. Well, everyone's locked in, right? You're stuck inside your house mostly. And when you're inside your house, there's only so many things that you can do. Your whole schedule is disrupted. Likely, you're off work, or if you are on work, you're forced to sort of self-motivate you. And if you're not used to doing that, working for yourself and managing your own time it's pretty challenging. It took me quite a long time to learn how to do it. So if it's new for you guys, there's likely lots of procrastination. There's social disconnect. You're not able to go out and see everybody. There's anxiety, there's stress. It's how bad is all this going to get? The news is freaking out, and you have porn sites offering free premium and crap like that. So it's just like a perfect cocktail for people to just go on a massive porn bender, and that's just going to be terrible for you. It's going to be terrible because it's not going to, one, make anything any better, and two, it's going to put you even deeper in the hole for when this whole thing eventually clears up. Instead of being able to hit the ground running, you're going to be coming from a place of destroying your brain and your dick for who knows how long, and you're not going to really be able to do the things that'll allow you to get yourself back up to speed and really rolling again. And so we want to avoid all of that. We want to get you clean now. And there's a real power to this, because if we can get you clean now, well, then you can be clean whenever. If you can quit porn during lockdown, then you have that shit. That is who you are. And that's what we want to get you to. So first thing, if you're just generally going kind of crazy because you're consuming way too much news, and the news is just you're primarily looking at the mainstream news, which really they are massively incentivized to try and make this as scary as possible. I'm almost of the opinion that they're trying to actually tank the economy because they hate Donald Trump so much. I could be wrong. Maybe that's conspiracy theorist. But there's a lot of other news sources out there where I don't know. I'm not going to get political about this. My point is that they are incentivized to make this seem as bad as possible so that you stay as glued to their station as they can get you to be. Okay, so just be careful with that. really minimize it. Just check the news regularly, but like not all day. Don't just feed the drip of people freaking out. Like if people are just freaking out, then you don't need to consume it. And you might want to check out the last podcast I did where I talk more about staying calm and that sort of thing. But getting into the quitting porn part, I got a set of prescriptions for you, okay? And the first piece is going to be based around getting yourself bought in to being clean. Because you got to have buy-in. You have to really own the decision. This isn't something that's going to happen in a haphazard manner. You're not just going to like half-heartedly quit porn during during lockdown and succeed. It's just not going to work. You're going to need some real conviction here. And so what I want you to do is I want you to really think about this. Think about like, what do you stand to gain if you can become clean during this hard period? Right? What do you stand to gain? How strong do you stand to become? How well does that serve you in your future goals, your future desires, right? Think about it. Like if you can become that guy, then you can pretty much do anything. And I think it's worth it to give your all to become that guy. Even if you're not perfect in the process, maybe you slip here and there, but you really truly give it your all. Like it's like, I don't know if any of you guys are old school Dragon Ball Z fans, but like back when Goku was traveling to go fight Frieza, he was training in this gravity chamber where it was like 100 times Earth's gravity, where he could like barely walk. That's kind of like what this is. It's like the gravity chamber. And if you can stay in this and you can get into this process, it's going to make you so much stronger. And so prescription number one here is to claim this as a time of growth and to really embrace it and really dig in. And you got to think about your motivations for this. What do you stand to gain from it? Right? What sort of negatives do you get to cut out of your life if you cut the porn out? And then what sort of positives will that allow you to tap into? Higher levels of productivity, better connection, better romantic relationships, clearer mind, moral integration, whatever, the list goes on. And I talk about all that kind of stuff in all my other videos, but, take some time to reflect on this and then get serious and make a commitment to yourself. That's step number one. Okay. Now we're gonna move on to step number two. We got to get you to a baseline level of productivity. All right. You can't just do nothing and expect to stay clean, because you need it's like your brain needs structure and it needs to have purpose and it needs to feel like it's doing some good things. And then also you just practically need to do good things mostly. Like many of you are still working from home. Okay, if you're working from home, well, then you got to do your work, right? So maybe you got to set a baseline amount of like time blocking or something like that. You got to say, I'm going to put this many hours to work as I can. And the reality is, it's not 8 hours. No one works 8 hours for the most part, unless you do something very easy and menial. Like yeah, you can drive a truck for 8 hours, but you're not going to be able to do spreadsheet work for 8 hours. You're going to have, a few hours of really productive time, and that's going to be different depending on the person, depending on the task they're doing. And you got to be realistic about that. So get clear about what that is, and, you mark that down. Figure out what that is for you. And maybe though it's not work. Maybe, you're not currently employed. Maybe your job's just shut down at the moment. Well, you got to still have some productive time. Maybe this means a side project. Maybe it means chores. Maybe it means doing something around the house. Maybe it means like you're studying some subject that you're interested in. Whatever it is, you got to have some kind of productive time spent. It could be learning an instrument. It could be, I already gave you the examples, but like it could be anything. It's got to be something that requires a little bit of discipline and is good for you, because that will make you feel really good. Now, you don't want to make this crazy. Okay, you don't want to make this crazy. You want it to be something very, very reasonable. Something that you can be very confident that you'll be able to pull off every day, or at least, 5 out of the 7 days or whatever. And my recommendation, my official prescription for pretty much everybody, is to have at least a half hour minimum of productive work per day. Okay. Some of you, it's going to need to be more because you have a career and your career demands more time. Fine. Figure out exactly how much that time is, get clear on it, and track yourself. Okay. If you don't have that, well, the temptation is going to be to do nothing, don't do nothing. Do at least half hour of something. If you need to, you can even break it into 2 15-minute blocks, okay? You can always do more, just don't do less. Don't set some crazy high baseline for yourself. Be like, I have to do 5 hours every single day. You're not going to do that. That's just going to eventually cause more stress, and that's going to lead to more triggers, or it's going to just lead to outright failure, and then you're going to feel bad about yourself, and then it's going to have the temptation to just say, screw it all, and then just, go on a bender or something like that. So very realistic baseline, half hour minimum of productive work. That's prescription number 2. Okay, so number 1 was claim this as a time of growth. Number 2, half hour minimum productive work. Okay, now next piece we got to take care of is self-care. All right, now with self-care, there's kind of a few different pieces to it, and a lot of it depends on where you're coming from, which tells you how much you should be paying attention to this. If your sleep is already relatively stable, if your nutrition is all right, and you're already sort of exercising, you don't even need to worry about this. But if you're not, if all of that is off, then you're going to be making your situation way, way harder. And so we got to get a baseline for those things. Like if you don't have other stuff to do productive wise, this could be your productive work. All right. So really what you want is a semi-stable sleep pattern. You don't want to be staying up till 1 a.m, sleeping in till 10, and then having it change every day. That's just really bad for feeling together, feeling disciplined, feeling in control, and that sort of thing. Try and keep a standard wake up and bedtime. It could be a little later. It doesn't need to be the exact same hours you kept when everything was open, but you should try and keep it relatively stable. Okay. Next piece is you don't want to just be eating Twinkies all day. All right. That's just going to make you feel like shit. I know some people, it's their escape when they are stressed and they're at home and that sort of thing is to kind of binge eat or whatever. And just the fact that they go to work provides some dietary structure to their life. So I'm not saying you have to start some crazy diet right now. I'm just saying don't eat like terrible shit all day long. I found myself doing that a little bit, just because I could, because, went to the grocery store and we stocked up and we got all this stuff and I'm just like, blah, every night before I go to bed. And it's just like, okay, I shouldn't do this. It's making me feel terrible. So just don't be terrible with food. That's second baseline. Third baseline is really exercise. Okay. And when I'm saying exercise here, I'm really talking about minimum, and this is prescription number 3, minimum of 10 minutes of increased blood flow. Okay, outside if possible. That's the prescription number 3. Okay, and it's really the most important aspect, I think, of self-care during lockdown is to get some blood flow. Okay, because when you're just stuck inside, it's very tempting to just sit in your chair, go from couch to chair to couch to bed, and that's just going to make you feel horrible. It's going to make it's going to rob you of a lot of feel-good neurochemicals. That's really the heart of it. And when you're going through the rebooting process, you're being flooded already with discomfort. You're being flooded with cortisol, which is a neurochemical which doesn't feel good, especially during triggers. And what we got to do is we got to try and balance that out by bringing in the other feel-good neurochemicals. And so exercise is one of the biggest ways you can do this. And it doesn't need to be something crazy. Now, I was thinking about this. So there are different scenarios. Some of you can go outside. That's great. Go outside, go for a walk, go for a run. Doesn't need to be crazy. Just you can walk for 10 minutes. You meet the prescription. It's going to make you feel a million times better than doing nothing. If you already have kind of a fitness regime or you feel motivated to start something, well, you can do a little bit more. I got kettlebells and barbells, so I'm lucky. I can do actually pretty much a full workout, and it's great. I'm used to working out at home. If you're like that, then great. Just make sure you keep it up. If you're interested in starting something new, maybe you pick up a kettlebell, maybe you order one. Maybe I think a lot of them are actually on back order right now though, so maybe you're gonna be struggling with that a little bit. But you could get a dip stand. They're not that expensive. They're great. You get one of those doorway chin-up bars. There's a lot of body weight programs that are out there that are great. all kinds of stuff. Like maybe you don't want to do any kind of strength training. Maybe what you do is you're in an apartment building and you just walk up and down the stairwell stairs. You do that. Maybe you literally just have to walk around your house or your apartment or something like that. You have to just move for a period of time. Like it really matters. Okay. So do that. And if you can go outside, make sure you have that time outside. So, okay. Moving on, now we're going to start getting into the very porn-specific sort of recommendations here. So first things first is you got to know what you're going to be doing instead when you get triggered. Now, we can break this down into two sort of categories. One is we got occupier sort of activities, and then we've got processor sort of activities. So what would be an occupier? An occupier would just be something that you do. It's kind of stimulating. It occupies your mind, and it'll help you just not think about porn, hopefully. And this is something like video games, TV, listening to podcasts, that sort of thing. Maybe like reading a book, something like that. It fills your mind and it'll distract you. And you should probably be having some of this. And it's okay to turn to this kind of stuff. Like I'm not expecting anyone to play 0 video games during this period. I even broke my video game fast, and I got Doom Eternal, and you know I'm getting ready for my nightmare run. So it's like, it's fine. It's fine, but you just can't do it so much that it then saps your brain. That's the problem, is when you lean too heavily into this kind of thing, it puts you in that zombie mode. If you just keep scrolling the internet and you just keep clicking and you just keep putting yourself into autopilot, well, that's not helping you. That's just going to make it more likely that autopilot steers toward more and more stimulating things like porn. And so if you're watching TV and that kind of stuff and you're binging on Netflix, make sure it's not something that's heavily triggering. Okay, that's not going to help you, right? So the quality of the stuff that you consume is important here. Now, this stuff, like I was saying, like this is the occupier sort of thing. And to turn toward this when you're triggered sometimes is appropriate and okay. But it's not really a solution. It doesn't actually solve the cravings in a lot of instances, especially as you get further into the reboot. Eventually, you're going to have to actually process the cravings. And in order to do that, the best thing I've found is to make sure you have something else that you're doing that kind of protects you while you're processing. So that's what I call these processing activities, a processor. So it's like you could go for a walk. So if you go for a walk, if you're allowed outside and that sort of thing, that's perfect because you're not going to relapse while you're walking around, hopefully. But you're also free to think then. Your brain isn't absorbed like it is when you're playing video games or watching something. So you can think, and we'll talk about what you should be thinking about in a second. But going for a walk is fantastic. Journaling is fantastic because you have a tactile thing that you're engaging with. That's really good. Combining journaling plus a community, or even just interacting with a community, like a quitting porn community, something like NoFap, or if you're part of the Universal Man Vanguard, getting onto the Discord or the forum. Those have been popping off lately because the community has been growing quite a bit. So you could always check those out and just start doing the processing work there. If you're on a quitting porn website, I've found that it's very unlikely that you will be going to a porn using website in that immediate time frame. Usually, if you're going to that porn-free website, it kind of shifts your brain. It's like your brain starts getting populated with all the good information that you need there to make good decisions. And this is where we start getting into, well, before we get into the next one, the prescription here, prescription number 4 is to know what your activities are for when you're triggered. You got to have them crystal clear. Okay. So you need to have your processor activity mapped out. You got to know what it is that you're going to do if you want to actually do some inner work. It could be walk. It could be listen to music. It could be getting on a community. And if you can think of anything else, maybe you call a friend who is in on this or something like that. There's not a ton of different things that you could do for it. Maybe you go sit out on your deck, something like that. Okay. But you also then need to know what your occupiers are. So it's like you got a nagging craving. You maybe you've even already done some processing work and you just need to take your mind off things. Know what those things are. Okay. So that's prescription number 4. Now, moving in, taking things another step deeper into the porn quitting process. Let me just get a sip of coffee first. Yeah, sorry for the lack of editing. I just don't have it in me to edit anymore. I've edited so many of my own freaking videos. I just can't listen to myself talk anymore. And since my editor at the moment is currently out of commission due to everything, you're going to have to deal with these little ad-lib breaks. But anyway, moving on, taking one step closer, or one step deeper inside, we got to talk about self-talk. Okay, self-talk is super important, and you know this if you followed any of my work. Self-talk is about getting your rational mind to speak to your emotional mind, and this is incredibly important during those critical moments when you're triggered, because if your rational mind doesn't step up and fill your brain with the information you need to make good decisions, then all we have then is your emotional mind, and your emotional mind, all it has is, if I watch porn, it feels good. If I don't watch porn, it feels bad. And if that's the only information that's in your brain, guess what you're going to do? You're going to watch porn because it feels good. And that's the information that's in your mind. So we have to shift that, and we do that through self-talk. Now, in order to engage in self-talk, you have to have self-awareness. You have to be able to know what you're doing. You have to know consciously that you're triggered. Now, if you're at the stage where you just relapse on autopilot constantly, then you need to focus on the previous steps, okay? And you might even need to use something like a porn blocker as a temporary kind of speed bump that prevents you from, acting out too quickly and then forcing yourself to become self-aware, because you need to have the self-awareness. So like when I'm working with a client, stage 1 is to break their autopilot. Stage 2 is to make it so that they can actually use their self-awareness to stay clean. Because a lot of people, even after they get self-awareness, they still don't stay clean. They still relapse. And why is that? Because they don't know how to respond to the thoughts that come up. So like, this is where rationalizations are an issue, right? Where you become self-aware. It's like, oh, I'm triggered. But then you tell yourself a rationalization for why it's okay to use porn. And this is a huge downfall for a lot of guys. They have there are a million different excuses I've heard, rationalizations people use to use porn. But for most people, they only have like a few that really kind of they use. And so what you need to do is you need to identify what are your core rationalizations. And they always follow the same pattern. And the pattern is, it's okay for me to use porn because X. Okay? And you got to identify what those X's are and what you use to give yourself permission to act out. And maybe you've never consciously thought about these, but you need to. So what are some examples? So one of them is like, everybody's doing it. Well, just because everybody's doing it, does that mean it's good, particularly good for you? No, it's pretty much shown that it's absolutely horrible for you and for everyone else. So like, even if you're not making a moral judgment for everyone, you don't need to decide for everyone. You need to decide for you. Is it good for you? No, then you don't do it. And you need to tell yourself this, right? So it's like identify the rationalization and come up with the response. Okay, and I imagine that there's plenty of people out there who are using the rationalization of, oh, these are exceptional times. I can't quit porn during lockdown. It's basically like a government mandated porn holiday. Poof. I mean, there's all this free premium and stuff out there. I mean, like, how could I not? I mean, it's like, don't. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that all that stuff's there. It still doesn't make it good for you. And in fact, it's putting you in a position to get hurt by it even worse. It's sad. It's sad, but this lockdown is probably going to be good for my business. And I'm not really happy about that. But, that's the reality, is that people are going to hold themselves back. They're going to bury themselves in a hole. People who probably didn't really have a porn problem are going to get one. And that sucks. Don't be a part of that, right? And you got to tell yourself this sort of thing. So like other rationalizations, one of the biggest ones is when people engage in some kind of what I call phishing, where they will go to a site that's technically non-pornographic, like, a social media site like Reddit, Imgur, something like that, Instagram, and they scroll things that are not technically classified as porn, and they say, this is okay, this isn't porn. And then either they just jerk off to that stuff, which makes it porn. If you're using it like that, then you're using it pornographically. Or they just then say, oh, well, if I've already looked at this is basically porn, although I said it's not porn, so I might as well look at actual porn. And then they do that. So like, that's also a dumb rationalization. It's like, if you're looking at sexual imagery to get yourself off or just to simply get yourself excited, you're using. You are, as an addict, are using. So you can't fib to yourself and pretend like, oh, well, only 1 in every 30 images on this image sharing site are really triggering, so I'm not really using. Yes, you are. You're just using, but with a slot machine element involved. Okay? So you have to tell yourself that. You have to think through this. So prescription number 5 here is to take inventory of your most common and potent rationalizations and write down your responses dismantling those rationalizations. So it's like rationalization X, it's okay to use porn because, you write that out, and then underneath it, you're going to respond and say, this isn't true because X, Y, and Z. And I would recommend revisiting these regularly, continually remembering this, because in the moment, it's very difficult to come up with these responses. It's much easier to remember these responses if you've already created them. So that's why I'm telling you right now, create the responses. And this is going to really, really help you. And if you relapse without being able to speak this stuff to yourself, then you might need to focus on the previous prescriptive steps, or you might need to focus on drilling your responses into your brain. And you can do that using my Metascript method, which you can check out by probably in the description below, or you can check out my Man of Action series where all of them, their descriptions have it as well. It's a journaling technique. It's very powerful. And a lot of guys really, really like it. Lots of good feedback on that one. So final piece here, we're going to kind of the deepest element of this process, at least the deepest element that I think I could get into in this video. And we're going to be starting to talk a little bit about transmutation. Okay, the bottom line is, if you're trying to stay clean during this time period, you're going to have some pain. You're going to have some discomfort. It's not going to feel good the entire time. Now, when I say that, it's not going to feel bad the entire time either. This is one of the things, this is one of actually the rationalizations that guys use. It's like, I feel like this. I can't keep feeling like this. Well, you never will. Like, no urge lasts constantly. If you have an urge that lasts all day, it's because you're making it last all day. Or it's because you have some underlying emotional issue, like some kind of anxiety, fear, or worry that you're experiencing as a sexual trigger, which can happen if you've trained yourself to avoid feeling the core feeling and instead just feeling, it as a desire to escape through porn. But that's kind of a side issue. But for most cases, people like who experience an urge, that urge, it'll come and go. It'll last 5 to 15 minutes, and then you're fine if you get on the other side of it. But these waves will come, and you have to stay present during them. You have to be with yourself. You have to be present. You have to be feeding yourself good thoughts, reminding yourself, hey, this is why we're doing this. We're doing it because we want to get clean, because we want to get a better life. We want to have better relationships. We don't want to have a dysfunctional brain. We want to be more productive. You got to be telling yourself this stuff so that your emotional mind, it doesn't freak out and it's willing to stay in the discomfort. Okay? So, but it's really the presence in the pain that actually matters, because your brain, it gets hooked on porn through excess pleasure. And so it makes sense that in order to get unhooked from porn, you're going to have to feel some pain. Okay. And one of the analogies that I've used for a long time now is this idea of pain soup. Okay. It's like there is a finite amount of discomfort between you and a porn-free life. And you can think of all this discomfort as filled up in a big pot of pain soup. Okay. And every time that a craving comes along and you have an option, it's either you can take a spoonful of the pain soup and just swallow it. And if you do that, it's actually a magical elixir. It makes you stronger. Or you can just avoid eating it. And then guess what? A spoon goes into the pot. And if you want to get clean, you just got to eat the whole pot of pain soup. And you don't need to seek it out. It comes around. The soup lady of cravings comes around, and you don't need to seek her out. She'll seek you out, and she'll give you, hey, time for your medicine. And you can either eat it and get stronger, or, you run away from it, and then she's like, okay, well, I'm going to put some more in, and you just put yourself further in the hole. So, that's one way you can think about it. Another way you can think about it, which hit me recently while actually playing the the Doom from the 2016 video game to get ready for the new one coming out. There's like a part where this guy, the Doom games, if you're not familiar, you basically kill demons. And that's why I kind of like it, because, demons are bad and, that's who you're killing. And you're this Doom guy and you get the main, you can't tell if he's a villain or not. He gives you this power orb, and it's filled with energy. Okay, it's like he's got like hell energy. And he's like, here, take this. If you can survive this, the power surge, it'll make you stronger. And Doom guy, he crushes it, and you see this electricity go inside of him. He's like, ah! But then you get stronger. You can use it to upgrade your character. And a lot of video games have stuff like this, where you have power-ups, and you see the character getting powered up, and they're like getting electrocuted and filled with all this energy. That's pretty much what processing a craving is. It's like you have to if you can like hold that power surge, like you can stay present with yourself in that discomfort, you literally are getting more powerful. It's just the cost is discomfort. Right? And what's happening is that your rational mind and your emotional mind are being refused. They're being rejoined because a porn problem is caused by a split mind. Your rational and emotional cells being disconnected, where your rational mind says, hey, porn is bad. And your emotional mind saying, hey, porn is good. That's the split. It's this Jekyll and Hyde. And most people, they go through this kind of pendulum swinging back and forth between them. And like, you have to fix that. You want them on the same page. And that's what my Reforged Man course that I mentioned in the beginning, that's what it's all about. It's about repairing this rift. And so really, like the way we get the heat to meld these parts back together, that is the cravings. That is when you get this surge of energy. And if you're present in it and it feels like hell, it can really feel like a despairing, horrible hell, because there's all kinds of repressed emotion. There's lack, there's longing, there's anguish, sometimes there's rage. There's all different kinds of shit that goes in there. Basically, whatever your unique cocktail of circumstances and emotional repression and pain and wounding that has led you to become a porn addict, like whatever that is, you're going to get a flare of that in the moments that you're craving. And if you're brave enough, you can lean into that and you can use that fire to forge yourself stronger. Okay, I'm dead serious. This is how it works. It's literally like a video game. And if you can weather that storm, then your emotional mind starts getting reconditioned. It starts thinking like, oh, every time we send this porn craving, we just get pain. We should rewire ourselves. Maybe we should stop asking for porn. And then you move a step forward to having your rational and emotional minds aligned. And this is really the magic. This is where like no-fap superpowers come from. It's like when your emotions, your positive emotions are aligned with positive things, and your negative emotions are aligned with negative things, then living well is easy. Like most people think that living a good life requires, I gotta fight myself so much. Yeah, if you have a split mind where your emotional mind is like attached to bad stuff, it's attaching good feelings to bad things and bad feelings to good things. Yeah, it sucks living like that. But what if we could flip that? What if we could get you aligned? That's literally the human superpower. That's when, imagine being paths of progress would feel good. Leveling up in your life felt good. It was exciting. You got a dopamine hit from that rather than from porn. And porn just kind of made you feel a little bit revolted. Then you could really thrive. You could really take off. And what that takes then is for you to be present in the pain and to view it as good, view it as serving you, and tell yourself, hey, it's not going to last forever. It's going to pass, and I'm going to be stronger. Okay? And that's the final prescription here, is to see this pain as power. So that's what I have for you guys. Let's recap real quick. So first thing, you want to claim this as a time of growth. Okay, you want to commit to this process mentally. Second thing is, you want to make sure that you have at least a half-hour minimum of productive work per day. Okay. Next is you want to make sure that you're having at least 10 minutes of enhanced blood flow per day. And, like I was saying, you can always do more productive work and you can do more for a workout, but these are the minimums. Then you got to know what your occupier activities are and then your processor activities. Have them listed out and clear and then ready to fire off if you need to. Next, you want to write down your main rationalizations for using porn and then practice dismantling them. At least have your responses written out for your main rationalizations. And then finally, You got to see the pain as power, and you got to be present in it. And so that's pretty much what I have for you guys today. Hopefully you got a lot of value out of this. Like I said, I got a sale on my Reforged Man course that's out. It takes all these concepts, goes way deeper, and I think you can get a lot out of that. Otherwise, you can also check out my Vanguard community if you want a place to discuss this kind of stuff. And that's pretty much it. Stay healthy, play big. I'll see you in the next one.